Hi everyone, it's Aoife from SmartGirl Stories. I recently interviewed Indy Lee, founder of Indy Lee, a skincare brand that's focused on clean beauty. We talked about her business and some tips and tricks she has to running a skincare business, along with her story. Hope you enjoy.
So I'm Indy Lee. I'm the founder of Indy Lee Skincare. We are a clean beauty line, and I'm proud to say I'm one of the pioneers of the clean beauty movement. I started the line back in 2009 after successfully surviving brain surgery for a potentially fatal tumor that doctors thought was environmentally derived and could have been something as simple as what I was putting on my skin. And I always like to say that was my awakening, and when I realized that I was a passenger in my life and not an active participant. And so it was in that moment that I realized that I wanted to create change in an industry and to develop a line that was safe, that was effective, that looked beautiful on a shelf, but I really wanted to educate and empower others about how to live their healthiest life. Now you have to realize back in 2008, 2009, clean beauty wasn't on the scene, and people didn't realize that there was very little regulation, if any, and at that point laws had not been substantially changed since 1938. So I really wanted people to understand that it is up to them to do their due diligence. Much like they look at the back label for what's in their food, they need to do the same thing about what they're putting on their skin, their largest organ. So prior to starting Indy Lee, and I was diagnosed November 4th, 2008. My surgery was in April 22nd, 2009. And then I would say I got very busy with the business of self-care. I forgot to take care of myself. And in 2024, June of 2024, I underwent 2 additional brain surgeries because my tumor had come back. So, you know, I always tell people it wasn't something that I was very upset about. It was something that I realized happened to me, but actually for me, to realize I needed to take better care of myself and I need to continue on this path, and that my work wasn't done. Prior to starting the company though, I'm actually a public-private CPA. So I graduated from SUNY Oswego in the spring of 1993. I went on to work at Ernst & Young, got my CPA, worked for HBO in their international finance division, managed their international finance division, then went over to revenue reporting, and then left to spend more time with my kids. And then I got very involved with the farm to table movement, and that eventually led me to skincare. Now you have to realize there are a lot of different directives based upon where you live. And so the US has the least stringent controls. Europe has way more. We formulate to the EU directive. In fact, we have Cosmos certification on a number of our products, which basically is certifying that everything from farm to face has been overseen and annually audited by leaders in biodiversity and sustainability. So it's, I mean, for me, it really is a passion. It isn't just about, yeah, let's do something because it's got aloe in it. You know, there's a lot of greenwashing. Clean isn't really a regulated term, so it's hard to understand what it means. And for me, it means using ingredients at levels that will do no harm to the environment, to the individuals and animals living on it as well. So I always say I don't want to do any harm to the planet or anybody who lives on it. And that's basically how we formulate, is really taking a look at the ingredients. I think that's the best way to say it without going into the deep science, but it's got to be proven to never done anything, no harm. Now, I always say that because you can find something clean like arsenic, poison ivy, perfect example of something that is absolutely natural. But certainly most people who put poison ivy on their skin are going to have a negative or an adverse reaction. On the same token, what is toxic for one can be non-toxic for another. Perfect example of that is peanut allergies and tree nut allergies. So there's no like magic list because everybody is different. But for me, it's using ingredients that are harvested from either mountains, the ground, ocean, etc., but botanically or minerally based. Again, and it goes to preponderance of precaution, right? So, and I always say, when in doubt, formulate it out or formulate without. So, for example, you know, talc. And many people have been continue to use talc, but we know now that there is a potential for it to be contaminated with arsenic, or rather asbestos, and can lead to a whole host of problems. I mean, take a look at what's happening at Johnson & Johnson as a result. So you really have to do your own due diligence, unfortunately. So I am very lucky. Up until probably 2 years ago, I was working with a creative director who I just think is brilliant. And he took who I was and created the packaging pretty much that you see today, which is really, it's funny. All the colors are based on a surf house, so a lifeguard house, right? On the beach in Santa Monica. And we were sitting there and we were looking out on the ocean, and we saw this like lifeguard shack and had all these incredible surfboards leaning against it. And we used that as the color palette, like the ocean and water. I'm from Long Island, like you, like that is something that's very much a part of my life. And so the glass, recycled, by the way, it's post-consumer recyclable recycled glass. It has like that sea glass kind of, you know, blasted look to it. Again, a nod to the ocean and what, you know, speaks to me. And so we used all those elements and infused it into the look, which is very minimalistic, which is on purpose because I want it to be used across, you know, basically unisex. And I wanted it to look beautiful on everyone's vanity. The challenge always comes down to resources. So whether it's time or money is always something that you keep in mind. But we have issues, I mean, supply chain, making sure things can get on time, making sure that you don't have any shortages. Right now, everyone in the beauty industry is freaking out about tariffs and what this is going to mean for us when we bring in, you know, our packaging as well as ingredients. You know, I can't source every ingredient here in the US because that's not necessarily where it grows indigenously. And I want to get the most optimally grown ingredients. And if it's not optimally grown here, then we should get it where it is optimally grown. And so I would say those are really the big challenges. Obviously we've got regulatory and making sure that you're not making claims and things like that. So there's a whole host. I would say any vertical is going to have its challenges. How do you get the marketing done? Well, that's always going to be a function of money, you know, and how much money you can put behind it. But then you also have the products. Okay, well, what's the supply chain, and is there a delay in it, or what's the tariff and the cost and all those things? So availability. So I think those are the biggest challenges that we run into. I mean, I think you always see trends, and I think the trends are cyclical. You know, let's take, not even just diving into skincare, but just take a look, you know, it was like wide leg jeans. Well, those were called bell bottoms at some point, you know. So, I mean, these trends come and go. Right now, I think we're seeing now the donut glaze skin, you know, and all those things. And again, it really is about beautiful, dewy, glowy, plump, pillowy skin, which, by the way, for me is healthy skin. Right. And so what I'm excited about this is we're talking about the beautiful, healthy skin. It isn't that it has to be, you know, tons of highlights and tons of this, which is just not really natural. Like, oh yeah, so it was glazed donut and now it's looking like a buttery, melty. Again, for me, let's just focus on healthy, glowy, dewy skin. I would say when I was in college, I was a little bit lost. I'll be honest. I was trying to figure, and by the way, I think that's the point of college, right? Is to be lost and to try new things and figure out who you are. But as I like to say, as I've gotten older, I figured at 30, I figured out who I was. At 40, I started to love myself for who I was. And at 50, it's fantastic. Like, you start to realize, look, all that was just noise, but I love who I am, and I love the body I'm in for all its imperfections. And it's a much different way. I read an article that other people's opinion of me is not my business. And you know what? I think that's very valid. We have to stop thinking that there's just one way. And so I will admit, of course, when I was younger, I wanted to fit into that box. I wanted to look like everybody else. I wanted to feel like I fit in. And quite frankly, I think we're all meant to stand out. I would say for skincare or businesses that are highly saturated, know your unique selling point. I think that's really important because right now it's like, how do you differentiate yourself? It's very difficult. So I think know what's unique about your product or products and your brand and really speak to that. I would say get some mentors. That's really important, is to have other people to be able to bounce ideas off of. And you can't do everything. You're never going to be all things to all people. And I think that once you really understand that, success is obtainable. I think we have to be everything to all people, and that's just not possible. So I think those are really key pieces of advice. And then the other thing is, asking for help is actually a superpower. It is not a deficiency.
Hi Smart Girls, I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. Stay tuned for more exciting content from Smart Girl Stories.